Hello, friends! At last, the moment we've all been waiting for has arrived. The KOLA Keep On Listening Awards Album of the Year. Boy, has this been fun to do and exciting, sifting through all of the worthy entrants and testing them all in things like, well, congeniality, swimsuit, talent, and then, of course, that wonderful question about how they would help promote world peace and harmony. And there is one album that has come head and shoulders above the others, not least because of the Vaseline on its lips and the other things that it did to get us all excited. But seriously, now this is really a wonderful, wonderful album, and I'm thrilled to be able to tell you about it. I've been holding it back for all this time because I really think it's an important and major contribution to the discography, and that is Villa-Lobos, the complete symphonies on Naxos, featuring the Sao Paulo Symphony Orchestra under Isaac Karabtchevsky. Now, this is interesting to me, anyway, for a lot of reasons. First of all, it is not the first Villa-Lobos cycle. The first one was with Carl St. Clair on CPO, and it's extremely good. It's very, very good. I'm not talking about this one being clearly superior. They have pluses and minuses both. But this cycle, first of all, is the first done by native forces, which has to count for something, doesn't it? But more importantly, it says something about the consistently improving musical culture of Brazil, because Isaac Karabtchevsky did possibly the worst ever recording of the Bachianas Brasileiras back in the day, not with the Sao Paulo Symphony, but it was just awful. And, Villa-Lobos is a wonderful, wonderful composer and an important composer. But if he doesn't get promoted really well, with really superb first-class advocacy in his native Brazil, who else is going to do it? It really is unfortunate because, the man wrote 11 major symphonies, serious symphonies. He was a serious symphonist, but he gets no credit for them at all. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But my point now is that what this fabulous album demonstrates is that he can be performed to world-class standards in Brazil with a first-rate symphony orchestra. We got inklings of this, of course, from the BIS recordings of the complete Bachianas Brasileiras and the Choros pieces, and also a whole host of other orchestral recordings with John Neschling and Marin Alsop. They are a wonderful orchestra. And so now, finally, they have turned their attention to the symphonies of their greatest musical son. Now, why doesn't Villa-Lobos get any credit or attention as a symphonist? It's really, there are a lot of reasons. Let's face it. First of all, let's talk about the most obvious one. He's not European. He doesn't write in the Germanic symphonic style, even though he calls them symphonies. He's best known as a romantic nationalist composer, and he's best known as a composer of sort of exotic, colorful, Brazilian-influenced music. And the symphonies are just as Brazilian-influenced as anything else he wrote, but most of the time they don't say that. They don't come out and say it. They call themselves symphonies. So they're approached from a different angle. They're judged by a different, and I think false standard, quite frankly, and they don't get any attention. But they are fascinating and important works for a lot of reasons. They date from around 1916, when he was initially in Paris, to 1957, just a couple years before he died. So they cover the entire span of his career. There are, as I said, 11 of them. Number 5 is missing. We don't know if he ever wrote it. Apparently, he never told us, and no one's sure where it is if he did write it. But all of the others are intact, and there are some really, really magnificent works in here. And because these performances are on Naxos, I have permission to play them for you. But the other problem, I want to come straight out and say this with his symphonies as symphonies, is that Villa-Lobos was such a personal composer, such a unique individual composer, that first of all, his symphonies don't sound like anybody else, and second of all, they're not terribly easy to digest. They're very rich. You know what his orchestral style is like. Lots of notes, very lush, very dense, all kinds of stuff happening all the time. And although he could be supremely beautifully melodic, that's not always what he was out for. I mean, he was much more interested, I think, in color, in texture, in harmony, those kinds of things. There aren't a lot of eminently singable tunes in these symphonies, believe it or not. And there aren't a lot in like the Bachiatas Brasileiras, other than number 5, the one that everyone listens to because, the sopranos hum it. But basically, his style is a more complex and I think more sophisticated than people give it credit for being. And that is particularly true in these symphonies because in his own way, he did treat the symphonic form very, very seriously. And there is a wide range of expression in these works. There's a wide range of musical evolution in them. It's not what you might think it is because they begin in a very late romantic, rich and somewhat exotic and romantically excessive way. And they become progressively a little bit more linear, more perhaps neoclassical, although that's such a stupid term as it applies to Villa-Lobos, but a more restrained, more formally concise as they go. Which some of you may like the later ones better than the earlier ones. Some of you may like the earlier ones better than the later ones. I like them all. I think they're absolutely remarkable works. Because one thing about Villa-Lobos is that his style was so individual that his music kind of sounds like there's just this giant Brazilian Villa-Lobos blob that he just cut off chunks and called them different things. And he may have called one chunk Symphony number 6 and another chunk Choros 9. I mean, it's all Villa-Lobos. It really is. And that's really the point here, because these symphonies are in no way inferior to the other music that he wrote, and they are not stylistically dissimilar in an important way. I do get the sense, like I said, that he took the idea of writing symphonies seriously, the concept of writing abstract pieces that embody a sequence of emotional states and that aren't overtly programmatic. But there's a choral symphony in here. We're going to get to that. I'm going to talk about them one at a time, and I'm going to play you some samples of 5 of them. So I really want you to get a sense of what you're in for. Now, the wonderful thing about this set, aside from the fact that it's wonderfully played and recorded and absolutely beautifully done, is that it's a box like this. In other words, you can get all of these volumes separately, which I think is a wonderful thing, because if you don't feel like getting 6 discs of this stuff all at once, and I understand if you don't, you can pick and choose, and that's why I want to play you samples from most of these so that you can get a sense of what the music sounds like, and that will give you, I think, all of the information you need in order to make your own listening decisions. But I cannot stress enough just how important this music is. What a great and significant contribution to the 20th century symphony this is, and how tragic it is that they have been completely neglected up to this point. Really, almost entirely neglected. It just boggles the mind. It truly does. And I've tried to explain it a little bit. I don't think that's the whole story, but I think that's a lot of the story. But let's let our ears do the deciding for us, shall we? Now, the first 2 symphonies were composed in 1916 and 1917, possibly revised in 1944. But number 1 is subtitled O Imprevisto, which means the unexpected, and probably no one expected it less than Villa-Lobos. I mean, to be there writing a symphony in France, but he did. It's only about 27 minutes long. It's in 4 relatively pithy movements, but they are very, very dense and very, I mean, I keep using the word lush, but that really is his style. It really is. Part of it comes from the fact that he likes writing in middle registers because he was a cellist, and the brass equivalent of the cello is sort of the trombone, and he likes to write sort of dense harmonies for the lower strings and the lower brass, with the violins and the flutes and those guys way, way, way up above, doing all kinds of crazy figurations and ostinati that are quite uncomfortable to play, it sounds like. And so that gives his music its unique texture. And, there's always a lot going on in his music. People have described it as a rainforest, like a jungle teeming with life. And it's a pretty accurate description. It really is. And in fact, the second symphony, which is Ascension, Ascensão, if you pronounce it that way in Portuguese, I don't have any idea. But, oh my goodness, this is about 50 minutes long. It's a major, major, major statement. And I am going to play you the beginning of it, just so you can get a sense of what it's going to sound like. It is so beautiful. Oh, it's so beautiful. And just instantly captivating texturally, because he's just such a chord guy. I mean, even though he wrote fugues and things like that all over the place in his music, he liked fugues too, but he was a chord guy orchestrally. And here are some pretty amazing chords. So there you go, the opening of Symphony Number 2 by Villa-Lobos. So that's that. Now, let me see, did I put it away? Yeah, okay. Next we get Symphonies Numbers 3 and 4. These both date from 1919, and they are both war symphonies. One is called War, appropriately, and the other is called Victory, appropriately. But the War Symphony, the movements have titles. They are Life and Labor, Intrigues and Rumors is the scherzo, and then Suffering. Ooh, Suffering, a big funeral marchy sort of thing. And then the finale is an Allegro Impetuoso. It's a battle, and a wonderful battle with all kinds of the Brazilian national anthem and La Marseillaise and bits of things all mixed up in it. And it's the 1812 overture updated a lot to World War I. Call it something like that. It doesn't have cannon shots in it, but it's okay. And it's really, really marvelous. I'm going to play you a little bit of of Suffering, of the slow movement. I just think this is a really soulful and beautiful piece of writing. It really is. And I think that you'll enjoy it tremendously. It's quite long. It's 14 minutes long. And the symphony is only 31 minutes, so it's almost half the symphony. But it's full of incident, and it keeps you listening constantly to see what's going to happen next. So here is a bit of Suffering. Suffering. That was suffering. Yes. Could you tell? And then the next symphony, number 4, is Victory, the Victory Symphony. And the interesting thing about this particular Victory is that it's not particularly bombastic. It's not a grand choral apotheosis. The ending in particularly sounds like it's a qualified victory, a victory that is snatched from the jaws of defeat at the last minute. Here is the end of the Victory Symphony. I was very impressed with this because, it's an opportunity to really let it all hang out and be really kind of vulgar. And Villa-Lobos avoids that completely. It manages to sound, I think, satisfyingly victorious, but it's not tacky. It really isn't. Here it is. Victory. Now, as I mentioned, number 5, I have to organize myself for a second here. There we go. Number 5 does not exist, so we don't have to deal with that. Number 6 is in some ways the strangest of all the symphonies. It really is. It dates from, 1944, and it has a subtitle, which is in Portuguese, but in English it's On the Outline of the Mountains of Brazil. And the way Villa-Lobos got the thematic material for this symphony is he took a topographical map of Brazil and graphed it and stuck it on music paper and theoretically picked the notes of his themes from the outline of the mountains of Brazil. Now, doing that kind of thing is going to result in some fairly unusual tunes, shall we say, or themes, almost atonal, quasi-atonal, somewhat random, and turning that into a symphony, as you can imagine, was something of a project. Just how successful the whole thing was, it's up to you to guess. I find the 6th to be the least convincing of all of the symphonies, possibly for that reason, because I think the approach is a little gimmicky. Although, I don't think he was dumb enough to be literal about it. When you listen to the symphony, it sounds like it's by the same guy who wrote all the other symphonies. But that's me. You got to pick one that's going to be less interesting than the others. And for me, it's the sixth. But the seventh, whoa, the seventh for the next year, 1945, the seventh is a knockout. Absolutely a knockout. Let me see what movement I have. Oh, yes. It is a stunner for a big orchestra. It's 40 minutes long. See the other one, the sixth, is only 28 minutes. So, yeah, it doesn't matter. But this one is stunning. And I'm going to play you a bit of the scherzo. Gives you an idea of what a Villa-Lobos scherzo is like. His scherzi are weird. They're very interesting. They're full of little thematic bits and very tricky rhythms, and they're really, really quite quirky. Very, very quirky. Full, again, like all of his music, full of personality. So here is the scherzo of Symphony number 7. Nifty, huh? Really nifty stuff. So there we are with Symphony number 7. Now, we've heard now 1, 2, 3, 4. Last example. Okay. Now, the other symphonies after 7, that is 8, 9, 11, and 12. There are 4 because 10 is special, and we're going to talk about that. Those are what you might call his more neoclassical symphonies. They tend to be relatively short, under half an hour, 4-movement symphonies, and although quite different from each other, they all are recognizably from the same stylistic period. They date from around the 50s, 1950 to 1957. And I don't need to play examples because from what you've heard, you can get a sense of what you're in for. It's only a little bit more concise and perhaps a little bit more disciplined or austere in terms of its coloration, but it's all hanging out there. I mean, it really makes no difference, all things considered. But and if you want to know more about them, by the way, I've reviewed a lot of these on classicstoday.com too, so you can see some read some of those reviews there. At least a couple of them I've done. I don't think I've done all of them because I'm saving it for you, for our KOLA Keep On Listening Awards Album of the Year. So number 10. Number 10 is an oratorio. It's subtitled Amerindia. And what it basically does, it's kind of complicated what it does. It has a text that's in wordless gibberish, partly, and then partly in like Portuguese, and partly in Latin, because what it's about is about the founding of Sao Paulo. And so you have some fragments of religious poetry in Latin. You have in the indigenous peoples running around. You've got animals. You've got a movement that describes the creation, the earth and its creatures. I mean, this is an everything, including the kitchen sink kind of piece. And I love it. And, you know, it's been recorded quite a few times, all things considered, about 4 or 5 times, which I find absolutely stunning, all things considered. And there are no bad recordings of it. I mean, if you're going to do it at all, basically you do it right. But I want to play you, let's see, the first movement is called The Earth and Its Creatures. The next movement is called War Cry, which has Father Earth. It's no Mother Earth here. It's Father Earth. I mean, this is Latin America, machismo. It's Father Earth. But you do have the war cry, mostly executed by the wordless female choir. And then we have a scherzo, which is about black-mouthed monkeys hopping around doing whatever black-mouthed monkeys do. And you have indigenous men and the voice of the earth. And I mean, it's just, it's all over the place. It's fantastic. And then we come to, wait a minute, here comes the fun part. Then let's see, we get the voice of the earth and the appearance of Father Anchieta, who's going to be the founder, basically, of Sao Paulo, and is going to convert the heathen and do all that, the coming of Christianity. And it's kind of like the Kalevala, which ends with the coming of Christianity also to Finland. Well, this is the same thing in Brazilian terms. Nowadays, of course, this would all be hopelessly politically incorrect because we're not supposed to like any of that stuff, even though it's really, we have such an ahistorical and I think totally sad and foolish view of, the reality of how life was back then and what happened, and when various cultures collided. So I'm not going to go there, and I'm not going to challenge anything, either modern or the past. I'm going to just tell you what the music does. And I want to read you the text of the end of this fourth movement, which is the long movement. It's like 25 minutes long. The whole work is only about an hour, but this is a heaping chunk of it. And it has two sections. The last section is subtitled The Dragon of Hell. I mean, what's not to love, right? I mean, seriously, what is not to love? The Dragon of Hell. And here's the text. It's even better. You ready for this? But behold, I'll hold this up a little bit. Maybe I can look a little better. But behold, a new dragon with a scaly chest is prowling the earth and digging a hole with its enormous body. Oh, Talon, whatever that is, it is impossible to know if such monsters are vomited up from the earth's, from the earth's caves or from the black regions and lakes of Coritus. Yes, Coritus. All right, wherever that was. It is impossible to know. Oh, I believe for my part that this scourge emerged from the lake of Styx. We love the lake of Styx. Or from the horrible waters of Acheron. This is all this Greek mythological stuff, which I'm going to mispronounce horribly. Then we said, it displays its bloody throat. Go far away, dear flock, or the beast with bloodthirsty. This is so tiny. I'm sorry. It's so small. Okay. Or the beast with bloodthirsty teeth will devour you. The deadly Calvin. Calvin? Yeah, Calvin. Get it? The Protestants, I think. I mean, where else would Calvin come from? The deadly Calvin emerges from gloomy Averno. Now, Averno, I can tell you what Averno is. Averno is a smoky volcanic cave in central Italy that was believed to be the gate of hell. And I know that because Handel, in his early oratorio, The Resurrection, has an opening aria, that great aria, Diseratevi o porte d'Averno, open the gates of Averno, the gates of hell, and Lucifer comes out, remember? And he says, close the damn gates. That, let the light of salvation shine in the gates of Averno. That's Averno. It's a place in Italy. So the deadly Calvin emerges from gloomy Averno. Boy, is that a mixture of stuff. And brings with him deadly food from Phlegethon. Phlegethon, yeah, Phlegethon, whatever that is. Whoever he feeds dies. Get away from here. Get away from harm. You who seek an everlasting life, whoever he feeds dies. Well, that's the first bit. And the second bit is Withdraw. The serpent in the fire of Tartarus is thirsty, and its infected mouth causes serious harm. It does not spare the earth, nor does it spare the supreme Olympus. For you, God of gods, not you, God of gods, not you, Holy Virgin. If the serpent spares the dignity of the flesh, it does not spare that of the mind. Whoa! Right now, let's face it. What do you honestly think someone's going to make of that as a choral setting? Well, we're going to find out. Here it is, the end of part 4. I think that's about what you'd expect from horrible monsters coming from Stygian blackness and creepy, icky serpents with their Calvin coming back from his vacation in Averno. I mean, oh my God, Calvin. I mean, yeah. Okay, so you get the picture, right? This is really a knockout of a piece. In a way, it encapsulates everything that Villa-Lobos thought he could do in a symphonic and choral context. But it didn't end there, because on this last disc, number 6, you get Symphony number 12, plus that wonderful tone poem, the Urapuru, it's a bird, an Urapuru, and Symphony number 12, and another cantata called Mandu Sarara. We're not going there. Look, let's face it. You're not going to get many more recordings of the Villa-Lobos complete symphonies. And the ones that we have, fortunately, like I said, are excellent. Both this one and the CPO series. But this series was finished this year, just in time for me to give it the KOLA Album of the Year accolade. And I really, really hope that you'll take the opportunity, if you don't want to get the complete box, which is extremely reasonably priced, to get at least some of it, listen to some of it, and do take your time with it. Villa-Lobos is like a rich dessert. You can only take so much at a time. I really believe that. I don't think it's helpful or good for you to overindulge all at once. It requires and rewards serious attention and time and thought and consideration, because there's really, really interesting, sophisticated, marvelous, and expressively very, 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 very intense and spontaneous and, stuff happening in this music. And so it deserves to be savored. And that is the beauty of recordings. They allow us to savor the music. So as my disc of 2020, the KOLA Keep On Listening Award, Album of the Year, Villa-Lobos Complete Symphonies, Isaac Karabtchevsky with the Sao Paulo Symphony Orchestra and choral forces on Naxos. What a thrill it has been getting to know this music, and over the years really, and to have this opportunity to present some of it to you now. I wish you all the very, very best for 2021. I can't think of a better way to ring out the year than with this box of beauty. Beauty in a box. That's what it is. Take care, everybody. All the best.